All right, next we're going to take a look at the anatomy of the eye using a couple of different eye models. So what we have here is a model that shows both the muscles as well as the outer layer of the eye. So the muscles here are simply rectus muscles. We have a superior rectus, inferior rectus, and lateral rectus muscles there that help to move the eye in its socket. Okay, next what we have here is the external tunic or the fibrous tunic, and the fibrous tunic of the eye is divided into two parts. We have the sclera, which is the white of the eyes, and then we have right here the cornea. The cornea is a clear refractive layer. It's actually very important for bending the light. It helps to bend the light and eventually focus that on the retina, and it actually does more light bending than the lens does. Okay, so we'll take that layer off. The next layer you can see inside is the more internal layer called the vascular tunic. And the vascular tunic includes the choroid, which is the dark area right here, as well as the ciliary bodies and things like that. And we're going to see that in just a minute. Next, what I want to point out here is underneath the cornea, what we have is the iris. Remember, the iris is basically an adjustable aperture that helps to adjust the size of the pupil. So if it's really, really light outside, we're going to constrict and have a very small pupil. If it's very dim, on the other hand, we're going to dilate and have a bigger pupil to let more light in. Okay, so we're going to take that apart there. So remember, this was our choroid. Next, inside there is we have a layer that is our retina. Okay, the retina is otherwise known as the neural tunic. And that's where we convert nerve impulses, we convert light into a pattern of nerve impulses that the brain can understand. So other structures we need to point out in here, first of all, we have the optic nerve right here, the optic nerve that leaves the back of the eye, and then we have the optic disc. The optic disc is the area where the optic nerve leaves the retina, and it's an area where we actually have a blind spot right there. Okay, another area we want to point out is something called the fovea or the macula, and that's where we have the highest density of photoreceptors, and that's going to be where we usually focus our light onto. Now, up front in the eye, you can see the backside of the iris right here. We also see something called the Oricerata in the ciliary bodies or ciliary processes. These are kind of part of that choroid area, and the purpose of this, we have firstly suspensory ligaments that would be hanging onto the lens right there and helping to bend that lens for the process of accommodation. The other thing these ciliary bodies do is they generate the intraocular fluid, which keeps the pressure and the shape of the front part of the eye. Okay, so next back here we have our lens. Now the lens is sort of a crystalline structure, but the lens is ideally very bendable, and so the ligaments of the ciliary bodies are going to be pulling on that to help flatten the lens or bow it back out to help with accommodation and focusing on near and far objects. Okay, next inside here, you might be asking, what is this big thing? It looks just like a big clear thing, and that's to symbolize something that's called the vitreous body. The vitreous body is a big glob of goo that's very viscous, and it helps to give the eyeball shape so that it can have this three-dimensional globe-like structure. Because anytime we change the shape of the eyeball, we change the focusing and the refractiveness and where the light gets focused. So it's important that we have a very round eye, and in part, that's the job of the vitreous body right here. Okay, other structures which we've seen pretty much already. We talked about the optic disc right there. We talked about the retina. The retina was the neural tunic, and again, that is where transduction of light happens. And then that nerve exits the back of the eyeball is a cranial nerve, right? So that's cranial nerve number 2, the optic nerve. Okay, so that's one simple eye model that we have right there. Now let's look at another eye model. Okay, so this model is a little bit different. This is the Neuer-Gimpert model. It's a little bit more detailed. Again, you can see we have our superior and inferior rectus muscles, our lateral rectus muscles there, and then we have something called the lacrimal gland. The lacrimal gland is responsible for making tears, and so that's for tear production. Again, we had our sclera, which was the white part of the eye. We had our cornea, which is the clear refractive outer part of the eye that helps to bend light. Okay, we take that apart, and then we can see our irises on the back side there, so it's not a great model of the iris, and then the pupil. Okay. And now we can see on the inside here, this is all retina or neural tunic, and then underneath that retina would be choroid. Now, extending anteriorly, we have part of that vascular tunic, which is partially our choroid, but this is the Oricerata and also the ciliary bodies that, again, generate that intraocular fluid. We also have little ligaments that are hanging on to our lens, which I can't seem to find the lens for this guy. Okay, now this thing right here was supposed to be the vitreous body, showing on part of it, and the rest of it is showing your rods and your cones, which were again part of your retina. Okay, so on the inside here, again, you can see this is the anterior part of our ciliary bodies, and then back here we have our retina, and underneath our retina is going to be our choroid, and outside of that is going to be our sclera.